functions 3. So this is actually going to look a little bit familiar because we are uh, reverting back to function 1, which is our first task here, and we're looking to improve it. So the 3 improvements we want to make are to do something called refactoring, which in computer programming and software design, code refactoring is the process of restructuring existing code, uh, changing how it's factored or calculated, or in other words, how it's written without changing its external behavior. So refactoring is intended to improve the design, the structure, or the implementation of the software while we keep the functionality as it was originally. So you can think of this as maybe rewriting your JavaScript so it's more efficient, maybe using a different technique to achieve the same results that might be either more contemporary or more flexible, maybe rewriting something in a more reusable way. So the first thing we're going to do is refactor the code that generates the random number into a separate function called random. So if you remember what we did um, in the previous functions, we did some randomization of the number, but we ended up putting it into um, just the logic ad hoc. We didn't actually put it into a function that we could call. So we're going to create this function called random and have it use 2 parameters, which are going to be our boundaries, or a high-low number. So we could say make a random number between 0 and 100, or 1 and 50, anything that somebody would want to input there. And then it's going to return those results. So that's the first part of what we'll do. The next part is updating the chooseName function, which so that it will make use of the random number function. So it's going to take the array to choose from as a parameter, making it more flexible, and then return the result. And the last thing we're going to do is print the returned results into a paragraph. So it sounds like we might want to open up function 1 to start. And maybe we're going to borrow a little bit of our code that we've already done there and then reuse it. So since we're going to refactor, let's take a look at both files here. So on top is function 1, and on the bottom is function 3. So I just want to double check before we just save as or just copy everything out that we're not missing anything or adding something that we need in there. So I'm going to take the existing function from 1, and I'm going to put this into 3. And so the first thing we're going to look at is refactoring the code that generates the random number into a separate function. Okay, so in order to do this, we are going to split up chooseName and random. So in order to do that, let's take and call new function random, and it wants 2 parameters, so 2 generic boundaries that the numbers should be in between. So let's call this low num and then high num. And then I'm going to take the random number item here. We're going to move that up into our new function. Move this comment up here too. And so we're saying let random number equal math floor and do all of our randomness here. So now what we need to do is probably can keep the random number variable name here, and we can probably keep all of our actual functionality as far as the logic goes. So if we start from the inside out, this is what's generating our number that's random, decimal point between 0 and less than 1. And then in the original, we're multiplying it by the number of names in our list. So now what we probably need to do is change that so we're looking at the values that somebody might pass in. So we want this to be low num and then high num, but that's not really going to do anything for us. So what we may need to do is a little bit of math here, because if we take the high number and then we subtract a low number from it, it's going to give us some value to multiply by random and then end up rounding it down to the floor. So looks like we should probably just start planning for some order of operations here and see what we can come up with. So let's actually take this out and run this as is and see what happens with it first. So we'll take that function, unexpected identifier. So let's type in random. Random is not defined, so we actually need to call it a function. 1 and 100, like that. Okay, uncaught reference error, random is not defined. Okay, so should be working here. So it could be that it doesn't like the fact that I don't have any operators in between low, high. So let's try this and update that. So let's just add these together to start and see what happens. So now if I say random 1 and 100, okay, so it gives me undefined. And random number inside of that function is locally scoped, so it's not going to work outside the function. All right. Spell right here. So let's just try this with some numbers actually in it. See what's happening here. Alright, so that works. So that gives me my random numbers. Then let's wrap this with the floor. Okay, so that works. So that's giving us a random whole number. And why would it not work with the variables in here? So let's try this one more time. Get that error out of there at least. Copy this out. So it's not defined, it actually understands it. Well, let's try one more thing. Let's see if it's changing our functionality or operator here is going to make any difference for us. Maybe because we're ending up with a negative number there, that could be causing some issue for us. I don't know. Low num is not defined. Oh, that's my typo here. So let's take a look. I did LOW, so let's do LO num. Okay, well, that's still not working. So that tells us the function. So that at least is valid syntax. So we're giving it function, we're giving it a name. Maybe I'm going to just add random num to it, just in case we're hitting a reserved word here. Oh, let's see what else we're missing here. So, got our statement there, but we actually have to tell it to do something else besides declare the constant or variable. I just changed that, thinking that might make some difference because it's not technically going to change. But we need a return statement. So we want to return random number, like so. And that's actually going to make it output a value for us. Maybe not. Oh, we have a num. Hey, there we go. Random numbers. Good. So let's make sure we're getting what we expect here as well. I'm going to change this to 5. And 0. Uh-oh, we're getting 0, even though we put in the low of 1. We're not getting anything higher than 5, so that's good. So why would we get a 0? So it's somehow getting a lower number. So adding those together, let's try and switch these around. Fix my naming here a little bit because that wasn't necessary. Okay, still getting a 0 there. So if we step this out, we're going to say 5 minus 1 is 4. We've got some random number and multiply it by 4. And then we're going to floor it. So maybe this is working somewhat like our percentages here. So if we get a 0, that probably means we have to add in the low number for those instances, so that if we ever got a random number that was 0.9 something, it's going to round down to 0. So let's try this. Let's add in the low num here. So our function is going to look like this. promising. So we get a 1. There's a 1. I haven't seen the 5 yet. Okay, 1s, 2s, 3s, and 4s. Well, I guess we'll see. We'll leave that as is for now. We'll see what the rest of the refactoring does. At least we can get 2 inputs. Now it says update choose name so that it makes use of the random number function. Okay. So instead of the choose name saying choice names, which is our array here, we are going to take an input of an array so that it's more flexible. So it says takes the array to choose from as a parameter. So we can actually put in here a placeholder for the array, and then this means anywhere we're referencing names originally, this means we can take any array name that we pass it. So we have to normalize this a little bit more. And then our function is called just random. And it requires 2 parameters. So we're going to say item range. Yeah, so we're going to say random range is going to be from 0 through whatever the length of the array is. Because that way, go from 0 to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. It's going to be 7 items. Yeah. Let's see how that does. So let's not forget our return like we did before. So I wanted to return the choice. And then I don't think we need this line in here because that is not relevant. So we'll do that. And then maybe we do need that. We don't need the function call here. So on para.textContent, instead of just outputting choice, which is protected inside this array, we have to output choose name and pass it the array that we're working with is names. Okay, so let's preview. And looks like we're getting something. We are not seeing any other JavaScript errors related to our code. So if I refresh, okay, I'm getting a random name out of the list. So that wraps things up. We have our random function here, and then we've inserted it into the choice and choose name array, and then we're printing the results into a paragraph.